this is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 66 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. And today, our guest is Phillip, who is the creator of Creative Smart Girl, a digital media platform whose mission is to inspire ambitious, creative, smart women to do the work to build the career, life, and style of their dreams. And on this episode, we're talking all about why our stories matter. And when I say our stories, I specifically mean, why our stories as creators, as dream drivers matter. And a lot of times, I hear this a lot when I am speaking to people, when I'm pitching people for the show. Sometimes I get that response that, I don't have a story, or my story isn't important. My story isn't special. And on this episode, Nia and I really talk about why that is not true, and why your story is special, and why our stories matter, and why they are part of a bigger legacy and a bigger history. So in this episode, Nia and I really talk about the power of stories in our own lives. She talks about what inspired her as a child and what life was like growing up in Grenada, moving to America as a preteen, and then later how she was able to navigate some of the challenges that she faced as a young adult. Nia also talks about the pathway or the journey that led her to founding Creative Smart Girl and the lessons she has learned since then. And then we dive into how we as creators, we as dream drivers can really identify the stories that have impacted us and inspired, and what can happen when we start embracing our stories. Nia opens up about the story that impacted her tremendously and how she was able to work through that and the lessons she has learned in her own life by embracing and releasing shame. And a lot of times why we as dream drivers are often scared to do that. So there's just so much stuff that we talk about. So one of the things that Nia and I are doing is that we are teaming up to do a month-long campaign in March called Her Power Story. So if you want to be a part of this, all you have to do is get onto Instagram, post a picture, write a caption sharing your story, and then use the hashtag #HerPowerStory to share, and we're going to be reposting it all month long. So I really invite you guys to do that. If this is your first time listening to a Dreams and Drive episode, I invite you guys to subscribe to the channel wherever you're listening, whether that be iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn. Hit the subscribe, share us with a friend, leave a review after the episode. I'll appreciate it so much. If you guys want today's show notes, and we have a lot of extra resources that are on the Dreams and Drive website, just go to dreamsanddrive.com and click on episode 66. Make sure to follow us on social at Dreams and Drive, and use the hashtag Dreams and Drive if you want to share any tidbits from this episode that really spoke to you. I hope that you guys enjoy. This one is special. We're actually going to start with a little clip from Viola Davis's post-Oscar acceptance speech. I want you guys to listen to what she says. That's going to set the tone for this episode. Plus, Viola is bomb, and we have to salute her. All right, let's get to it.
This is the first time in my life that I've stepped back. And I'm going to try not to cry now. All of a sudden, be cheesy. And I can't believe my life. My sister is here somewhere, and I grew up in poverty. I grew up in apartments that were condemned and rat-infested. And I just always sort of wanted to be somebody. And I just wanted to be good at something. And so this is sort of like the miracle of God, of dreaming big and just hoping that it sticks and it lands, and it did. Who knew?
Hi, Nia. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Dreams and Drive.
Hi, Rita. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super, super excited to be here. This is awesome. And I think this is actually my first podcast interview.
Wow.
So this is really
okay.
exciting.
This is going to go down in history, in the Creative Smart Girl history. I'm excited to be a part of that. Well, hopefully you enjoy it, and hopefully it's not scary or anything.
No. I'm pretty excited. I think it's going to be awesome.
This is going to be part of your story. And we're talking about stories today. So how relevant, you know?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
So Nia, you've listened to podcasts before. You listened to Dreams and Drive before. I love to go way back to the beginning with our guests. So I'm going to ask you this question. What inspired you as a child? So if I were to say who was Nia, the 7-year-old, the 8-year-old, how would you respond?
I think what inspired me as a child is really my surroundings and the people around me. I grew up in Grenada on it's a tiny island in the Caribbean. And we lived on like a hill, and there were all these really interesting characters that lived around me. And now I think back on it and I appreciate it so much. But that was my biggest inspiration growing up as a kid. Obviously, we didn't have much money or a lot of resources, but we had so much amazing people around us that had the best people to play with. My family, my mom and my grandma, the women around me were just so inspirational to me. I grew up wanting to be like them. So I think as a child, the thing that inspired me the most was my environment, because I got to be creative in it. You don't appreciate how protected you are when you live on a hill. Like people, people don't really have, a lot of access to strangers on a small island on a hill. You really know everybody around you, and everybody around you protects you, and you get to really explore and be creative and jump around and play with everybody. So my environment was such a huge inspiration. And then all of the people that really impacted me, I remember all of them vividly. It's amazing. It was an amazing childhood when you really sit back and think about it.
So when did you come to America?
In 99, summer 99, I was 12 years old, or maybe 11, about to be 12. When I came here, I was excited to come, and I thought I was only coming to visit.
Oh my gosh. You stayed?
I was going to go back home. So, it was the summer that I passed what we call common entrance in Grenada. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like the exam you have to take before you go from primary school to secondary school. And I had just passed to go to secondary school. And my best friend, who was my cousin at the time, we were going to go to secondary school together. And I was so excited for that because we didn't go to primary school together. But my mom had other plans.
So she didn't tell you. She didn't want you to be upset, or what? Like, right. Why did she? Okay.
I think it was just uncertainty, honestly. I don't think my mom really had a plan of like not telling me because she didn't, want me to be upset. I just think there was a chance that I would stay, and there was a chance that I would come back. And I was leaning more on the side of going back and not staying. But, we ended up staying, and, the rest is history.
Had you been to America before coming?
Oh, no. This was my very first time.
Okay, so I want to ask you this, because I think this is a fascinating question to ask people who visit America for the first time. Do you remember what it felt like to be there, like your first day in America?
Yes, I do. I remember it so well, because it's funny, because when you grow up in the islands, or maybe probably any other, foreign country that's not America, you have this very ideal vision of what America is. In many ways, people think of it like heaven, and I don't, if you're an American, you don't really understand that. But in many ways, growing up in another place, maybe a small island like I did, you have a very idealistic view of America, and a very idealistic view of what your life would be like in America. I think nowadays we probably have more of a realistic version because of the internet, and people can go on live, and more people come on vacation, so it's different now. But back when I came in 99, and when I was younger, you didn't have as much access to viewing what reality was in America. But I do remember what it was like on my first day. I remember driving through the streets. We came in at JFK Airport. And JFK is not obviously in Manhattan, Manhattan is probably the most popular view of what anyone would have of New York City. So I remember thinking, like, where are the big skyscrapers? Where are the big buildings? cabs and the I mean, there were yellow cabs, but they weren't as many. It wasn't that view that I had on TV. So I remember thinking that. I thought everybody lived in a house. I didn't know that there were, these apartment buildings and things like that. I had no idea. So, I remember just driving from the cab to my mom's really tiny apartment and thinking, wow, this is different from what I imagined. But, you adjust, you adjust really quickly and you learn, I was 12 and kids adapt really easily. So I did that. But I do remember what my first day was. It was very eye-opening, to say the least.
When you were in Grenada, did you have dreams of what were your dreams of becoming when you were older? When people said, oh, I wanted to be this or I wanted to be that. Do you remember what it was like before coming to America? And then how did it change once you came to America? Or did it change, I should say?
Yeah. Well, the summer of 99, I remember particularly really, really wanting to be a writer. And the reason why I really, really wanted to be a writer was because we had to write something in school about what our favorite time of year was. And I wrote this really authentic piece about Christmas because it was my favorite time of year. And I loved Christmas in Grenada. So I wrote about that and my teacher read it out loud. And it was like the first time that my teacher had read anything that I have done out loud and sort of like, this is a great job well done recognition. Mm-hmm. So once she did that, I was like, okay, maybe I could be a writer. So I came here in the summer of 99, really, really wanting to be a writer because my teacher had read something I written out loud in front of the class. And I'm like, well, maybe I could be a writer. And I remember that summer, my mom bought me like a binder with a bunch of like file paper. And I would write all the time, like write stories and stuff all the time. So yeah, I remember wanting to be a writer. That was my dream the summer that I came here. Before that, I kind of wanted to be a teacher because my mom was a teacher and teachers are just so well respected in Grenada and everyone I knew loved my mom and really respected my mom. So I wanted to be like her. Mm-hmm. So before that, it was probably a teacher and then, then a writer. And once I came to the States, you learn pretty early on what people value as like big paying jobs. Mm-hmm. So I remember like in the 7th grade, which was the first grade that I went to when I came here, everybody wanted to be like a lawyer or a doctor. I didn't really like science and math as much, so I chose to be a lawyer.
So is that what you went to school for?
Yeah, well, I went to school for political science because that's what I was going to be. I was going to be a lawyer.
There's a story there. I hear a story. Tell us that story. So you were going to be a lawyer.
Mm-hmm. I've said it for my entire American life living in America. That was what I was going to be, and I think I decided that in the 7th grade I was going to be a lawyer, and then. Yeah, I mean, the story is so long of how I got diverted from my path of being a lawyer.
All right, give us the 1 minute, the cliff notes, of the cliff notes.
Yeah. Well, really, it has a lot to do, and in the climate that we live in now, it's crazy, but it had a lot to do with the fact that when I came here, our immigration status wasn't all the way complete. Obviously, that took many, many years to be adjusted and to be fixed. So one of the most painful stories that I have about my life is not being able to go to college at the time that I wanted to go to college because I didn't have my permanent residency status. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have your permanent residency status or some other status that allows you to be in the United States, kind of on a student visa or something like that, you don't really get financial aid or any of that stuff. I'm not even sure if you get financial aid if you have a student visa, but I couldn't get financial aid. So I couldn't apply. I couldn't go to college right away. And when I actually started going to college, we paid for it out of pocket. My first couple semesters, or maybe even 4 semesters, was paid for out of pocket by me working and my mom working and people being super kind from my church and my father sending money from Grenada. That's how I paid for college my first few years. So I didn't get to go to my dream schools. And that's the thing, I wanted to be a lawyer, mm-hmm. and I worked extremely hard in high school. I not only is like in grades wise, but also in like extracurricular activities. And I was president of my class my senior year. Well, not even of my class. I was president of the school my senior year. And
were you growing up in New York City?
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to give us some location context. Okay.
Yeah, New York City, Brooklyn. So I basically grew up in Brooklyn. So I went to one of these big high schools in Brooklyn, Edward R. Murrow High School, and I was president of the high school my last year. And I was, I was really involved and active, and I was like, definitely going to go to college. And I was, I knew that this whole like, immigration status thing was a thing, but I didn't really know how deep it goes, because a part of it is, so much of it is, it's not an easy process. People hear things in the press and the media, especially now, and it sounds like it's so easy to become a U.S. citizen or a U.S. permanent resident, but it's not. It's super expensive and it's super complicated. And as a kid, I really didn't know. I kind of left that kind of stuff up to my mom. So when I wasn't able to, go right away or go to the dream schools that I wanted to go to, I opted to just go to school here at home and stay at home. And then I went to a CUNY school for a couple of years.
But CUNY is a city university of New York.
City University of New York. So I decided to go there, and they have great programs. It's not like it's not an option, but I wanted to go away. I wanted to have that experience, and I couldn't. But that was fine. After a while, again, you just adjust, because that's what life is about. And I think that's one of the things about all of my stories, is that I've fallen down so many times, and I've been diverted off a path that I thought was the right path for me, but I never stay down. I never stay down. I always adjust, grow, learn the lessons that need to be learned, and keep going. So I kept going, and I went to college for poli-sci for a couple of years. I studied political science, and I loved it. I mean, I was super big on like constitutional law, politics. I still am in many ways. But I think about maybe going into my third year, it just dawned on me that, I'm like, what do I really, really want to do with my life? And what makes me really, really happy at this point in my life? And I've always had a creative passion. Like, I loved dancing when I was younger in Grenada. I loved writing. I loved writing. I think part of why I loved politics and wanting to be a lawyer so much was because I loved writing so much and reading so much, because that's a lot of it. But I don't know if it's growing up West Indian, because I hear a lot of people say that, but I never at one moment in my life explored a creative career. I never thought that was a possibility for me. I never, your parents, your mom comes to America and she brings you to America. It doesn't, her thinking that I could be, some sort of broke
artist. Actor? What? What is that? What?
Right? Writer, live some creative life. That's not what she envisioned for me, And in many ways, my mom still says, you don't want to go to law school, Even though I decided a long time ago that it wasn't what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a lawyer. I didn't want to be, I wanted to be innovative, and I wanted to explore my ideas. And I think that's why creativity is more than anything, it's in ideas. So I wanted to do that more than I wanted to be a lawyer, going into my third year of studying political science. And at that point, I was still paying for college out of pocket. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take a break. I'm just going to take a break, and I'm going to figure out what I really, really wanted to do. And that's when I started to really explore entrepreneurship and what that looks like and what it means to have an idea and bring it to life and potentially earn money from it.
Is that where Creative Smart Girl was born?
Creative Smart Girl was born, after many, many attempts at businesses. So Creative Smart Girl is like probably the most successful idea I've brought to fruition, but there have been many, many iterations that had to happen for me to get to Creative Smart Girl. But yes, Creative Smart Girl is kind of born out of the idea that I want to explore my ideas, and I want to explore innovation, and I want to explore creativity more than anything else. So that's a long version of that story.
No, but I think it's important. And I think it's something that a lot of people can relate to, because there's a lot of things that affect us, like especially as children, that we don't necessarily know how it's going to pan out once we get older. You know how there's things when you think back about it now, like, wait, like, how did that not affect me? Or how did I not realize that, like, for me, like, my parents had to, I went to like a very elite private middle and high school for, and I never thought about, like, my parents were paying money, like so much money for us to go to this school, but it never crossed my mind that it was kind of like a financial burden, that we were struggling in some ways, because they never made it my problem until it's like, all right, well, college, you're on your own. I'm like, what? Like, I have to take out loans now. So that's so true. But I want to ask you this before we get into Creative Smart Girl and kind of what you're building with this platform is, which one of the ideas prior to Creative Smart Girl was the biggest failure, and why was it a failure?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. That's an awesome question. I think that's a tough one. There's been so many that didn't go the way that I planned, but I think I started. Well, what I really started is a lifestyle company with my best friend. So we started this lifestyle business called P&J Lifestyle, and we wanted to create products and platforms and things like that inspired Black women and spoke to Black women and in a unique way. So that was kind of one of the really first ideas that I really put a lot of energy into and a lot of investment into. So we started a t-shirt line, we started a blog. But I think the reason why it didn't take off or why it was a failure, I just didn't know enough, And I think that when you're like me and you get really excited about your ideas and you have a lot of ideas and you want to explore them, you don't take enough time sometimes to really learn. Like, you have to really learn your business. And I don't really consider it a failure, because it's kind of the reason why I have Creative Smart Girl. But I learned so much from that phase. It was a failure because I just didn't know enough, and I didn't know what branding was, and I didn't know what marketing was, or how to actually start a business. I didn't know any of that going into it. And I didn't have a community like I have now, or I didn't know where to find my people, which I know now. Like, that's such a huge part of it. And why Creative Smart Girl was so good for me is because I found my people. I know where I can find resources. I know if I have a question, who I can call, or who I can send an email to, who will support me and help me along the way. And I didn't have that in the beginning.
No, I want to get into what inspired Creative Smart Girl. So you had all these other ideas that may not have been, that there were learning moments for you, right? How did all those ideas, I'm in my head, it's funny, I wish you could read my mind right now, because I'm kind of picturing you like going up a hill and just racking up ideas until you finally get to the top and you have Creative Smart Girl. So maybe can you explain to our dream drivers what Creative Smart Girl is and what you're doing with the platform?
Okay, so Creative Smart Girl is a online platform inspiring ambitious, creative, smart women to do the work to build a career, life, and style of their dreams. So it's an online platform right now. We also host an amazing Twitter chat, monthly Twitter chat. We create amazing content for our blog. We're working on a newsletter, working on so many amazing things, but mostly it's really, really about community. That's what I think is the biggest thing that I've learned about Creative Smart Girl, because also Creative Smart Girl, I had my own ideas. And then, the people that support Creative Smart Girl and love it as a platform also help direct it into what it really needs to be and really what the purpose of it is. So, that's what Creative Smart Girl is. Like I said before, I had a blog before Creative Smart Girl with my best friend. It was called The Glam Savvy Life. And I was blogging for a long time with almost like zero traction. It was crazy. Like 5 years with nothing. It was silence on that blog. Because again, I didn't know enough. And one year I decided to go to a conference.
What conference?
I forgot what it was called. I forgot what it was called, but it was in DC, and I went to I think it was I forgot what it was called, but I went to a conference, and there was this panel with these amazing people that I'm still in contact with. It was Gigi of Gigi Writes. There was Sheffron, Erica. There was just these amazing writers on a panel, and they were talking about authenticity. And I was up there, and I could write. I know I could write, but I was always afraid to write. So I was like, let me just, throw up these style posts, and, style is fun and light and easy. Writing is more inward and reflective, and you feel more vulnerable when you write. Let me stay away from that was kind of like how I approached that blog. And I raised my hand during the panel, and I asked him, I said, how do you tell the story? How do you just write without the fear and the all the vulnerability of it? And they said, just do it. That was their response to me. It was like, you just have to do it. You just have to write. And I was like, okay. So after the conference, I went home and I wrote this blog post, and it was called, What Does Hard Work Look Like Anyway? Because everybody was saying, like, building a blog is hard work. Building a brand is hard work. But it still didn't dawn on me what that actually looked like. And I figured if I didn't know what it actually looked like, then a lot of people didn't know what it actually looked like. So I was like, let me write this blog post about what this actually looks like. And what it actually looks like is you're up until 3 a.m. You feel lonely. You feel alone. You feel like you want to give up. Your family don't have a clue what you're doing. So they're like, why are you up until 3 a.m. every morning? So, that's what hard works actually look like. Your relationship suffers. And I just was like, I hit publish on that blog post, and it was the most popular blog post probably that I've ever written. So many people felt like it was also their story. So many people felt like, oh my God, we don't have this conversation enough. So many people were like, yes, Nia, I can relate. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I never thought that I could write something that, this many people would feel connected to. So, and then I wanted to continue the conversation. And I figured the best way that I knew how to continue that conversation at the time was through a Twitter chat, because I had hosted a couple Twitter chats before. I had seen Twitter chats, and they were amazing, and I loved jumping into conversations with them. So I was like, well, let me just host a Twitter chat. And I just thought to myself, I said, who do you want to talk to, and who do you want to reach, and who are you? And the answer just came back to me as you are a creative smart girl, and you want to talk to other creative smart girls. And just like that, Creative Smart Girl was born. And I called the chat the Creative Smart Girl chat. And it was, that simple, if you want to call it that. That's kind of how Creative Smart Girl came about. And that's kind of how the chat came about.
What year was this?
This was 2015.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Early 2015 or mid, like what?
Late 2015, actually. The first Twitter chat was November 2015.
Okay.
So I reached out to a couple of the people that I knew who responded to the blog post, and also some people that I really respected online, and said, hey, do you want to sit on this panel for this chat? And they were all really supportive, and they all said yes. And we had the first chat, and it was amazing. Like, so many people joined in on that chat. The numbers were out of this world. And I hosted the chat, and then I was like, I didn't know if I was going to do it again, or if I should do it again, or what I was really going to do with Creative Smart Girl. I was still kind of up in the air. And Sakita Holly and Melissa Kimball were like, you have to do it again. they really didn't give me a choice.
I love Sakita. She was episode 6, I think, on Dreams and Drive.
She's a big sister in my head. Mm-hmm. So she was like, you have to do it again, because they were on the first panel. And I was like, okay, I'll do it again. And I did it again. And it was kind of the same thing. People had the same reaction. They really loved the chat. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to build Creative Smart Girl into its own platform. We have this amazing chat. I want to tell more of the stories that I shared that inspired people to join the chat. And I want to build a community. And, I just ran with it.
So how has the platform grown since 2015, November 2015? Maybe you can share just that growth story and how that has inspired you to keep going.
Yeah. In terms of, I try not to put a lot of pressure on myself or even like the people that I work with about our numbers. But I will say that the chat continues to grow. We're literally always one of the top 20 trending topics on Twitter whenever we have a Twitter chat. We continue to grow on social. I think when I first started doing the chat, I probably had maybe 500 followers on Twitter, and now we're at 4,000 something followers on Twitter. The growth has been tremendous, but more than those numerical number growth is that I can feel the community. I can feel that people, really look forward to the chat. They really look forward to talking to other women and sharing in a conversation about how we can help make each other better. I know that people sometimes feel alone, and I know that people sometimes feel like they don't have anybody to call on, anybody to collaborate with, and you could come to a Twitter chat and find that. Or you can write me or talk to me or send me an email or, and you can find that. So the growth is really in the fact that people want community and people believe in community and believe that you can find it online. So that's what's amazing about that.
And community is also about being able to share and participate in other people's stories. And one of the reasons why Nia and I are here talking today is because we wanted to promote the idea of sharing our stories and why, especially in Women's Month, it's so important that we as women, and for you guys who are men listening in, your stories are also important as well. But we wanted to talk about and just highlight that women's stories and her power story is also important. So Nia, tell me this. I want to ask you, is there a story that you have about yourself that has really impacted you and impacted who you are as a person? Maybe you can share that with our audience.
Yeah. There are really so many. There are really a lot. I have
the first thing that comes to mind.
The first thing that comes to mind, and probably I've shared it with some of my really close email subscribers and things like that. But the story that comes to mind that a lot of people don't know is about me being married for probably less than a year and getting a divorce. After that, I think that story that when that happened, that was probably the worst thing that could have ever possibly happened to me, because it was so painful, so humbling, so embarrassing because it was so public. But when that happened to me, it also was one of the best things that's ever happened to me, because when the worst thing that can happen to you happens to you, you're like, what do I really, really have to fear? It made me so fearless on another level, because I thought I was fearless before that. I really did. But then I went through that, and now I'm extremely fearless. There really is nothing that really makes me feel like I can't come back from it, because I came back from that. I bounced back from that. So I think if I had to choose a power story, if I had to choose something that when I feel down or when I feel like I'm incapable or when I feel small, that just helps me come back, that gives me power, it's that story. And, for a lot of people that could be so humiliating and so devastating. But you can come back from it. That's what I learned about myself. And I think that lesson about being resilient and then picking yourself up is a theme throughout every single story of mine. We could talk about my mother having to move to America and leave me behind in Grenada for a few years. That was painful. And, and I had to show resilience through that. Or my first year in the States, which was it was probably one of the most challenging years of my family's life. It was so difficult for us to adjust.
What made it difficult?
Well, I think the first thing that made that difficult is that you're away from family and I have a huge family, and I grew up in a house with all, like, my mom's sister, so I had all my cousins. And so you have this huge family around you that's a safety net. And we really didn't have that when, the first year in the States. And then my mom's job was kind of not secure. So my mom ended up not being, employed for a little while. We lost our apartment and had to rely on someone helping us have a place to live. So that year was extremely challenging. But we were, we were able to have a roof over our heads, and I was able to go to school and get really good grades anyway. Mm-hmm. So I think, my life is a reminder that no matter what you go through, no matter how challenging things may be, no matter how down you may feel, you still have the opportunity to be okay. And that's, especially if you have loving, and I don't want to speak from a place, because I feel even sometimes even when you have a challenging story, that there are privileges that come with it. I do have the privilege of having the most supportive mother and great siblings. And I have an amazing church family. So things like that play a role in helping you get back up. Some people don't even have that. So I get it that not everybody is able to pull themselves up or to be resilient in challenging situations. But if you have something that you can count on, if you have something that you can rely on, you really can be resilient and overcome things. And it doesn't matter how amazing I look on Instagram these days, or how amazing I'm an operations manager for an amazing company and, well-paying job I have now. It doesn't matter that that's my circumstances now. That could all change, but you have to be able to find something to hold on to and to come back from those challenging things. And that's literally my story. It's a theme. I trace the theme so many times throughout my life.
What do you think is the power in sharing your power story with others?
I think there's a couple of powers. I think it helps you. I think number one, it helps you to build up. I feel like sometimes we feel afraid to share our stories because we have shame, right? Mm-hmm. So I can sit here and be ashamed that I wasn't able to have a successful marriage, or that maybe my family was homeless for a year, or maybe that, my mom left me behind and there are just things that we carry with us and that we make burdens and that can make us feel shame. But if you tell it, you release it. You release that power that story can have over you to make you feel shame, and shame is such a powerful thing that women carry. That's why this is so important to me, is because I feel like shame is just it's just a burden that so many women carry because of a story, because of something that happened in their lives, that's something in society or someone told them that they should be ashamed of, or they feel it just because of the way the world is. So I feel like the first thing that is really powerful about sharing your power story is that it releases some of that shame. It helps you heal. It helps you deal with it in a way that could really help you. So yeah, I try to release those things so I don't get too caught up on the shame of them. And then the other thing is that you give people power. You give people power to share their stories, and you give people power to know that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to be authentic. It's okay to be true. I remember the first time I kind of talked about my divorce on Twitter, and like 2 other people were like, "Oh my God, I went through the same thing," So sometimes you feel like you want to be ashamed, that you want to keep something a secret, but then you share it. And then there's other people who went through the exact same thing, and then you give them permission to share. And you guys have such a human moment, such a connected moment that you wouldn't have had before.
Yeah, there's healing in that sharing. And I think that's something that, even when thinking about previous episodes for Dream Drivers listening in, episode 63 with Nicole Kane. If you guys know who Nicole is, she used to run the celebrity gossip blog, Nicole Bitchy, and she shared on that episode, the secret that she had been holding in for so long about basically she watched her mother, she watched her mother die, and the impact that had on her was something that, I guess externally she used that as a way to push through and to kind of find success. But inside she had been holding on to that for so long and not forgiving herself and kind of feeling like it was her fault. And it was when she was able to really acknowledge that and let it go and to openly talk about it and work through all that pain that she had held inside for so long was when she was really able to be free. And that's something that I think a lot of us have, that thing. And, you know, I think it's also important to know that you don't have to rush telling your story.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes some people may feel, I think sometimes when you prematurely share your story, you may not be ready to fully.
Yes.
What am I trying to say? Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
yes, no, that's a great point.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the thing. It's like, it's a difference between you being clear-headed and learning the lessons from a story, right? Then sometimes when you're going through that story, like I try not to share too many things when I'm going through it, you know, because, you know, you're just in a different mind frame and you're not able to be helpful to people. You may come off more of like as a rant or, you know, something that isn't very helpful to other people. But once you've gone through something and you're able to be a little bit clearer headed about it, you can share. So yeah, I think that's an amazing point. You don't want to share something too soon or too early. And we're all different and we all, have to know our limits and know what we want to share, because even in sharing, I don't share everything, you know?
Yeah.
And even in being authentic and telling stories, I try not to tell everything, or I try to wait until I feel like I can tell it in a way that is helpful to myself, to the people involved, and to people that might read it.
And you know what? I wish I could, I'm here scrolling through my text messages just because I had a friend, we were having a conversation where we were talking about something like personal, and she told herself that she had to remember that she didn't have to share everything in order for her to share. Like, I forgot what we were talking about, but it was just the point of like knowing that if you do choose to share, and if you don't want to share every single thing, like no one has to know all the private details of your what you're trying to share, but sometimes just letting it out in the way that you're expressing it is good, and you shouldn't feel like, oh, that's not enough, or I did too much, or I did too little. Like, no, you did.
Yeah, like for me, you will never hear me getting on here, even on the podcast or on social or anywhere, or even on my blog or somewhere, talking about the details of what happened in my marriage. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean that I can share, you know, because I just think that that's too painful for too many people.
Yeah.
And even though I might be healed from it and I might be working through that, doesn't mean that other people are in that space. Just consider, I try to be considerate about that. So, but I can still share that what happened, you know, and that alone in itself is so impactful to people because it's not something that people talk about as much. So that alone can be impactful for people without, you know, getting too detailed or too, you know, oversharing. Yeah, so it's totally possible. And I think that that's what a lot of people fear. Like, I am an extremely private person, believe it or not. I'm such a private person, but I know how to, as you do it more and you get more comfortable with yourself, you know how to share things and connect with people on a human level, on a humanity level, without, you know, divulging so much about yourself.
And in this age in digital media, you also have to be ready for your story to be shared, literally. You know what I mean? That once you share it, it now is open to the world. So you have to ask yourself, are you ready at this point in your life where your story could possibly go viral? You know what I mean? Your story could possibly then be someone else's story, or the focal point of someone else's story. So that's the age too. I think that could also be why some people may be hesitant, but don't let that be a reason why you never try. You know what I mean? You may have more positive, what's the word? Like positive stuff that comes out of it. Versus then all the negative things of what could go wrong that may hinder you from doing that. But Nia, I want to ask you, is there a story that someone has told you that has really impacted your life, your business, the way you see the world?
Oh, wow. That's an incredible question. Wow, that's a really great question. Has there been a story that someone has told me that has impacted me? I think there are so many, right? And I read, here's the thing for me with stories too, and about people sharing their stories. I think a lot of times we get so caught up in the extraordinary, right? So we want to read extraordinary stories. We want to read like this person has, gone through this amazing thing and they overcame this huge hurdle to get where they want to go. That's kind of how we engage with stories. But I think a lot of what I find really, really refreshing and stories that I really, really enjoy reading is just the normal stories about our lives. Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated by my mother. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm fascinated by my mother. I'm fascinated about the stories that she tells me about her childhood and about my grandmother and about how she grew up. Those stories really fascinate me. I'm fascinated by the nuance and sort of minutia about Black women that doesn't always get told because, of course, we have to be extraordinary for our stories to be told. But I'm really, really interested in, and that's why Viola Davis's speech.
I was going to mention that. Yes.
At the Oscars last night really resonated with me. I felt what she was saying, because it's like sometimes people, a lot of people's stories, they just go unheard. You never hear it.
Thank you to the Academy. There's one place that all the people with the greatest potential are gathered. One place. And that's the graveyard. People ask me all the time, what kind of stories do you want to tell, Viola? And I say, exhume those bodies. Exhume those stories. The stories of the people who dreamed big and never saw those dreams to fruition. People who fell in love and lost. I became an artist, and thank God I did, because we are the only profession that celebrates what it means to live a life.
And they have such great stories. Even it's not the story of like Barack Obama, but it's the story of the woman or the man that fed their neighborhoods, or the woman that, like my grandmother, who made an opportunity for everybody around her to get a piece of land so they could build a tiny house on. Those stories are fascinating to me. So whenever I get the chance to talk to my mom about, how she grew up, like my mom told me this amazing story. My mom is one of 8 siblings, the only one that graduated from secondary school and went to college. And I just was fascinated by why her? Out of all 8 siblings, why her? Why was it her? Because if you've ever read the Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, he talks about like what is success and how people get success. And a lot of it is just, opportunity and timing and, some luck and some favor, and my mom, I wanted to know why her, out of her 8 siblings, was able to sort of like, pull herself up. And she told me the story about her going to stay with someone for a summer, or going to stay with some distant family members one summer, and how they made her read all summer long and study all summer long. And that's where her thirst for knowledge and her ambition and her diligence came from. And I'm like, wow, if it wasn't for that one summer that my mom went to visit some distant family members who made her fall in love with books, I wouldn't have fell in love with books and stories. So that story always comes to mind. It's just like, because I really was fascinated with how my mom was able to do it. And that was how she was able to do it. And I mean, there are other circumstances too, but she pinpointed that moment as being the moment that changed everything in her worldview. And that fascinated me. I'm always after my mom to like write a book, to write her stories, because she fascinates me in a lot of ways.
And I think what made I thought of like my own parents, because like my parents are from Jamaica, and I feel like there's a lot of those type of stories, especially for my dad, and just like, you know, how he was the one that had the opportunity to come to America to study for he wanted, it's funny, he came here to do engineering, so he went to Lehigh, and just the whole chain of events, and how like we're continuously creating our legacy. And it's funny how each action we take, like just us talking today for this podcast, right? We're now changing our futures. Like, I love to think about that, right? Like what we would have been doing, we wouldn't have done it. So now we're going to create a new future for ourselves, and who knows what this will then lead to. But let's talk about this before we wind down, Nia. Is there are some people who are listening in right now who are saying to themselves, but I don't have a story. Or there's nothing special about me. Nobody cares about my life. What do you tell to that person? Like, what can we tell that person who thinks that their story is important?
Right. I think that that's a message, right, that the world sends, right? So the world says to us, if you don't have this amazing accomplishment, or you don't have this amazing expertise in something, or if you don't have this, that your story doesn't matter. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Every single person's stories matter. And the way that the way that you start connecting with that is just really, really thinking about who you are, where you come from, what has impacted you, what continues to impact you. But I think it's not true that your story doesn't matter. It's not true that you don't have a story. You do have a story, and your story does matter. And I want to read it. Mm-hmm. We all want to read it. And that's exactly what, again, I go back to Viola Davis's speech last night. That's exactly what she was saying. She was saying that as artists, we get to talk about a life lived, and a life lived does not mean that you got this recognition, or that you made this major accomplishment, or that you did this or did that. But a life lived was like, wow, I did, I set out to do this thing. And even if that thing is a failure, that's still an amazing story. That's still something that someone can learn from. That's still something that someone can grow from. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I feel like don't get caught up so much on the, if I don't have this amazing accomplishment or this amazing thing, then I don't have a story. It's not true. Your story is everything you've been through. Your story is how those things that you've been through have impacted you, how they've helped you grow, how you're still healing from them, and how they still impact you. All of that stuff is your story. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to be, and obviously all of that stuff is it's kind of depends on the person. It all depends on what a person thinks is beautiful, or what a person thinks is pretty, all of that stuff. So things that you're thinking is not beautiful, or is no story at all, or is not impactful to another person, that's life changing. It could potentially be life changing.
I 100% agree with you. And remember what Nia mentioned earlier is that when she shared her story, she didn't know that there would be somebody on the other side listening who said, I went through that same thing. I connected with you. We are part of a community, right? And for people who are listening in, we're all trying to be a part or create communities of some sort. So the stories are going to be the things that connect people. People remember, like, how they say that you'll remember something if someone tells it to you via a story versus just trying to memorize it. Like those storytelling is what has kept civilization going for so long. So absolutely. Don't ever take your story as not being important or not being part of a legacy that's bigger than you. But Nia, to wrap things up, let's talk about Creative Smart Girl. Tell me some challenges that you're facing and how you're working through those and and are keeping yourself motivated as you're growing.
Right. So how am I keeping myself motivated as I'm going? I'll start there. I think, obviously doing something like a Twitter chat, that's a huge injection of motivation. Mm-hmm. Every time before, each month before a Twitter chat, I'm extremely nervous. I'm extremely scared. But I go in there and I do it, and people come out and they show love and they show support. That's super motivating. It makes me want to work harder. It makes me want to put out the best stuff that I could possibly put out. So that's super, super motivating. But also what motivates me is that I really believe in the work. I really believe in the work that Creative Smart Girl is doing. I really believe, and really the work that Creative Smart Girl is doing is promoting and providing a platform for creative and smart women. I believe in that. That is my entire life. My entire life has been inspiration from creative and smart women, starting with my mother and my grandmother and my aunts and my older cousins. They have been a lifeline for me. So I believe in that work wholeheartedly. So that's super motivated. Whenever I feel, I don't want to do it, or, this is hard, I go back to the fact that you're providing a platform for women that inspire you and that you love and that you're literally obsessed with. I say all the time, creative and smart women are my celebrities. Mm-hmm. I love them. I'm fascinated by them. I want to know more about them. I want to tell their stories. I want to create content for them. So that's super motivating. Some of the challenges that Creative Smart Girl is facing right now is obviously monetization. And not because I don't know how, because I do know how. There's tons of stuff available on how to monetize a brand and things like that. And I've done my research and done my study. But I think, you just have to roll. I want to roll things out and scale appropriately. I want to make sure that when I do something, I just don't do it once and I don't have any process and I don't have a way of making sure it rolls out smoothly. Execution is really, really, really important to me. So it's not that I don't know how to monetize, but putting all of the execution pieces in place and making sure that when we do monetize something, we can scale it, that my team can handle it. The worst thing I feel like is if I monetize and then we can't handle it and then we disappoint the community in a certain way. I definitely don't want to do that. So I'm taking my time with it because I want to execute really, really well. So that's one of the challenges. I think another challenge that I face with Creative Smart Girl, and I have faced, is really sometimes when your purpose is about other people, you have a lot of skills and gifts that make you feel like it's about you. Right. And I've always known that my purpose was about other people, but God has gifted me with a lot of talents and a lot of gifts. And he makes me, sometimes it could make me feel like it's about me. So I have to constantly fight that. I have to constantly fight the urge to make it about me and to really focus on the community. And maybe that's just a personal challenge, but it definitely, rubs itself off into Creative Smart Girl. I have to constantly fight that battle of not making it about myself, but making it about the community and building that community in a way that it impacts other people. And even if that means sometimes I'm not in the spotlight. That's something that I've always, since I sort of figured out my purpose, that's always been something that I've had to battle.
So one of the things that we want everyone listening in is to engage. So this month we are doing a joint collaboration. Nia, Creative Smart Girl, and Dreams and Drive, we're teaming up to share your power stories. So Nia, can you tell our dream drivers listening in how they can engage and be part of our Power Story campaign?
Yes, I think. Yeah, so as Raina said, it's really, really, it's Women's History Month is March marks Women's History Month. And I think our stories are really what makes history. And I remember seeing Hidden Figures and they were like, Hidden Figures no more. And I thought about, what if there was a blog back in the day of these amazing women that were helping launch people into space? What if there was an Instagram, right? Someone would have put something on those platforms. Someone would have said something about those women on Instagram and said something about them on their blogs, and they would not have been hidden, And right now, so many of us are those women, right? We're doing amazing things. We're having huge impact with the work that we're doing and with our stories, but we just don't share it. So, for this month, I'm hoping that we all can come together as a community and share our stories, share our power stories. Don't hide them. Share them with the world. Let people know the amazing things that you're doing, and the amazing things that you've overcome. So you can just go onto Instagram, choose a picture, write a caption, and use the hashtag #HerPowerStory. And we will find it, read it, share it with our own communities, both on Creative Smart Girl and on Dreams and Drive. So please, we really, really want to read your stories, and we want to share it with the world. We don't want to be hidden figures.
Yeah. So make sure, as Nia said, get that picture that you want to represent your story, write your caption, use the hashtag #HerPowerStory. And should they tag us too, just in case?
Yeah, tag us.
Tag us
me at Creative Smart Girl.
And you can tag our platform, Dreams and Drive, at Dreams and Drive. So let's go into our lightning round, Nia. Okay. So at this point of our interview, I'm going to give you a prompt, and I want you to tell me the first word that comes to mind. And remember, we're going to be sticking with our Dreams and Drive metaphor, okay?
Okay.
All right. The first word is park.
I don't know how to park, like literally, like literally and metaphorically. I don't know how to park. I'm always in drive. I'm always, I was actually telling people that I need to get more sleep. I need to rest more. I need to take care of myself better. But I really need to learn how to park and make self-care more of a priority. But right now, I don't know how.
Reverse,
I think. What comes to mind is it's okay to reverse. It's okay to go back around. It's okay to turn around. It's okay if you're going down the wrong path to take that turn. It's okay to go back. Sometimes you need to just reverse a little bit to get clear.
Neutral,
I think is necessary sometimes. Again, just I've taken up meditation, and I think, when I think of neutral, I think of that meditated state where you're just trying to relax and mellow things out to, again, get clear. But yeah, that's what I think about.
And last but not least, drive.
Drive, just what I have. I'm just driven. And I know a lot of people are just so driven. A lot of young Black millennial women and men are so driven. I think, I don't want to, ruffle any feathers, but I definitely think we're probably the most driven, generation to do things our way. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
So you can't be a dream driver without your keys. So tell us 3 things that you think every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road. Those keys to success. What are they?
Oh, that's tough. I think the number one thing is resilience, or just that idea that if you go the wrong way, you're okay to turn around. You can get back up when you fall, and not being afraid of failure. I think, so many people get stuck in thinking that they can't fail, or they're afraid of failing. The number one thing I always say, the key to success, is understanding that you are going to fail, mm-hmm. and you are going to fall, and you are going to have to get back up. So that's the number one thing. If you don't have that, you'll fall apart and not be able to get back up. The second thing I would say is, I really believe in a community and a collaborative sort of mindset. I don't believe in winning alone. I don't believe that I have to compete with a whole bunch of people. I don't believe that I can't collaborate with people. I really believe in community. I mean, I've written about just how community has literally saved my life. I grew up in a place where I could go and ask people for a cup of sugar and a cup of flour. And that's really what community is to me. It's giving to people, and then people giving back to you, and you guys having this reciprocal relationship that helps, build each other up. So I think once you're on your journey, you have to have some sort of support system, some sort of community. The third thing I would say is you have to be committed to getting better, and to not thinking that, not allowing ego to drive you and thinking that you've made it or you're the best and nobody can do it better than you. You have to be really committed to saying, okay, I'm here and I want to get better and I want to keep growing and I want to keep learning. I think, those 3 things you can't really go wrong with.
So where can our dream drivers find you online if they want to engage and join your community?
Absolutely. So the website is creativesmartgirl.com. You can go there. You can sign up to be a part of our community, opt into our emails, read we have some amazing blog posts. And then, on social, you can find me on Twitter at CreativeSmartCo, and on Instagram at CreativeSmartGirl.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Nia. I really hope that everyone listening in shares their story using the hashtag #HerPowerStory. And is this going to be, I'm just asking you this, is this going to be exclusive to women?
I mean, it's Women's History Month, but I think, we are in community. So if there are guys that want to share and feel like their story is powerful, I know your audience is wide. So, definitely feel free to jump in. I mean, and be supportive of the women's stories that you might see as well. If you're a guy that wants to, support us.
Yeah. So definitely if anyone just wants to read stories too, you can definitely search the hashtag and go in and engage and find other people who are sharing their stories and support those.
Yes.
So thank you once again, Nia. And, it has been a pleasure chatting with you. And I hope that everyone listening in feels inspired and is just motivated to continue pursuing their dreams and know that it's worth it at the end of the day.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I had an amazing talk. This was great. I love it. And we're island girls, so
yes,
we know what it's like to have my story.
All right, so that's a wrap for episode 66 with Nia. I hope that you guys enjoyed listening to her share her dream driving story as well as her keys to success. And I also hope that you understand just why your story really does matter and are inspired to share your own. So make sure if you want to be part of our month-long campaign, go on Instagram, post a picture, write a caption sharing your story, use the hashtag #HerPowerStory. You can tag Creative Smart Girl and Dreams and Drive, and we're going to go in throughout the month and repost those stories that really are inspiring and motivating to our audiences. Thank you so much, you guys. If this is your first time listening, make sure to subscribe so that you get updates whenever we release a new episode. Also, make sure to go on social and add us at Dreams and Drive across the board, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I love going in and seeing what you guys are saying about each show. This episode is just one that I think will inspire many of you to keep going, to keep dreaming, to keep driving. Your stories matter. And when we're gone, our stories are what are going to be part of history. And I think that we all deserve to make sure that our stories make it into the history books and our stories inspired are and passed down to others and the future generation. All right. So keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in episode 67.